What's going on YouTube? SSJ, and it's been a minute, but here we go. So yesterday we actually got the premiere on Disney Plus of Daredevil Born Again, which is actually supposed to be like a soft season 4 basically of the Netflix show. It originally was supposed to be its own thing with like 18 or 19 episodes, but due to test audiences and them viewing it, they hated it and it wasn't good, so they scrapped it and went ahead and fired those woke directors and brought in the original people who did the Netflix show and Punisher shows as well. We open up to the world of Hell's Kitchen in its gloomy dark days that seem all familiar to the Netflix days, and then we see a shot of Matt, Karen, and Foggy Nelson just outside of Josie's bar, the same original Josie's bar from the Netflix show, and she actually makes a return, so that's cool too. They have a celebration and they're all drinking and having fun. This goes on for a little bit, but then eventually they're attacked by Bullseye. In a furious rage, Matt leaves and then becomes Daredevil, and Daredevil gets into a fight that's reminiscent of the Netflix series where you see the full shot of everything happening all at once, and then you just see the camera kind of panned out and Bullseye using every weapon to his advantage trying to hit Matt. He's throwing knives at him and they're sticking to Matt's suit. It's a great attention to detail. And Bullseye is great as you see him attack and kill every civilian that happens to be nearby. Wilson Bethel is great as Bullseye, and his origin is explained all throughout Daredevil season 3. By the time he was imprisoned at the end of that series, and upon being released up to that point, he's gone completely off the rails, because at the end of the part where they finally are both up on the rooftop, Matt, Daredevil, is asking him why did he kill Foggy, screaming at him why, but Bullseye's just sitting there laughing at him sadistically, so eventually Daredevil just pushes him off of the roof. Somehow he survives. So the next scene, Matt is in court and the next day to testify against Bullseye, in which they find him guilty, and now he's off to the Stony Lonesome for life. Karen and Matt get into an argument in which Karen leaves and then gives him back the horn that's a part of the mask that he threw off of the roof that night. Matt gets back home and then he overhears on the radio and TV that Wilson Fisk is running for mayor of New York, which we saw this in the post-credit scene in Echo, so this alarms Matt and he goes into work. Kirsten McDuffie is his new ADA and best friend. She decides to hook Matt up with Heather Glenn, who's a therapist, a well-renowned therapist and author. So Matt then goes to talk to private investigator Cherry, who also knew that Matt was Daredevil that same night as well, who urges him that a certain vigilante is needed again. Matt goes and listens to more of Fisk's speech, and during that time he makes a speech during his campaign, which is interesting. Soon after, Matt and Fisk run into each other in the streets and decide to have a chat in the nearby coffee shop. This conversation is an intense and interesting conversation. They talk about life 3 years later after season 3, in which they reveal they don't have kids, but Echo is mentioned here, in which Fisk says that was a child that he had mentored, and then Matt goes ahead and makes a joke saying, oh yeah, but she shot you in the face though. They both laugh. So that was something that was from the season finale of Hawkeye. Fisk and Matt agree that they've come up in the world, but they still don't trust each other for obvious reasons, since Wilson Fisk has tried to kill him many times as Kingpin while he was Daredevil back in the past. And Fisk knows that Matt is Daredevil and noted that tragedy can't transform a man, since he knows that Bullseye was the one that killed Foggy Nelson. So then Fisk says that he wants to make New York a better future and a better place. But then Matt threatens him, saying that he needs to play nice and stay in his lane. So then eventually he meets back. Matt Murdock eventually leaves, and then he goes to his date with Heather, which usually this guy's a player anyway, so he's always going on dates, right? The scene is a good play on where you see Matt hearing things like in a distance, him using like his super sensitive hearing to hear things off in the distance. You hear people in the streets just going crazy because of Fisk doing his more of his speeches on TV, and they see flyers and people passing out flyers for him. So the scene is a good play on him using his powers in that sense. Fisk eventually is urged by Vanessa not to kill Matt, since Matt knows, since they know about each other, they know about each other's past. And I think this is also a key reference to the ending of Daredevil season 3, when Daredevil said he would not harm her as long as Kingpin stays out of trouble, which he's getting into some trouble now, so hopefully he stays in his lane. So that ends episode 1. So now we're gonna move on to episode 2. So moving on to episode 2 of Daredevil Born Again, which is called Optics. Mayor Fisk is sworn into his office right away in the beginning and gives his speech. During his speech, he actually makes a reference to Punisher and Spider-Man. And when he talks about vigilantes not being official law, into question that there will be consequences. And this is in no relation to the Sokovia Accords because that got retconned pretty much in She-Hulk. So we flash over to the 168th Street station where Hector Ayala is having a conversation but sees a cop being aggressive with a guy that couldn't defend himself, and due to Hector intervening, the guy runs off and now both cops attack and beat Hector up. But then Hector gets up and knocks one of them out, and the second goon tries to punch Hector, but then Hector dodges it only for the goon to run over. He trips over and then gets run over by the train that's incoming in the station. And just like that, we're introduced to Hector Ayala as he is being told to put his hands up, NYPD. So shortly after the intro, Wilson Fisk is enjoying his office and he is being told by his assistant about all the meetings that he must go to since he just was sworn in as mayor, which makes sense. You got to go to all these different meetings and meet with different counselors and people and things like that. His assistant suggests that Vanessa be more supportive at the meetings and you know, show up at these conferences too, because it's apparent that she's still upset about him leaving and being gone for all this time after Daredevil season 3. He eventually was able to rebuild a new empire with the Tracksuit Mafia. You know, this takes place, you know, that took place after Daredevil at some point, and Echo and Hawkeye take place before this. You would have had to watch Hawkeye and Echo to know that Daredevil shows up in Echo months, you know, during Echo's earlier days of doing her thing as a vigilante as well. That's where we get the post-credit scene of Wilson Fisk deciding he wants to run for mayor. And prior to that, he was in charge of the Tracksuit Mafia and built that up from the ground up, even though they're idiots. He did build that up. And I guess he never contacted her and never hit her back up or anything like that. I don't know. So they have to get counsel, which he agrees that he'll try to get that done, and his assistant decides to accommodate him. So then eventually we flash over to Matt Murdock overhearing a cop trying to get Hector to admit that he killed the cop in the precinct, and then he is being charged for murder even though he did not kill this cop. Matt then uses his senses to tell that Hector is telling the truth based on their conversation, because if you've watched Daredevil season 1, you know that whenever Daredevil talks to people, like, he can like hear your heartbeat and things like that, and can tell if you're telling the truth by how fast your heart is beating and your heart rate and things like that. So he was able to use his senses to tell that Hector didn't kill this guy and he wasn't lying and he was telling the truth. So that is comic accurate as well, as far as Matt Murdock wanting to help out another vigilante. So then meanwhile in traffic, Fisk stops construction to get a hole fixed in the ground, which was the whole reason this traffic got caused. And this gets Fisk media attention, which he uses as an opportunity to take action. This is a great scene as he tells them they have the equipment and manpower, and he approves of it to be fixed. People record and clap, and of course they applaud. Meanwhile at the office, Matt and Kirsten argue whether or not to take Hector Ayala's case, because he wants to defend Hector Ayala because he knows that he's innocent and being charged for murder for something he didn't commit. But then Sherry, you know, private investigator Cherry, is looking in on Hector's files for Matt, as Matt requested. Matt then goes to court with Hector's first hearing. Hector has a wife, but she's not present. The crooked cops that were there in the police station are also present in the courtroom. Before Matt can even begin, the judge announces him guilty right away and dismisses the case. Next case, boom. So then Daniel gets reporter BB. Daniel's the guy that was from episode 1 that was a huge fan, basically glazing Fisk, as they say, like, oh, Mr. Fisk, you're so great, blah blah blah. His assistant, he gets BB. That I don't know much about this character. New, you know, black reporter woman character gets her a meeting with Fisk, and Fisk actually reveals that he knew her uncle in kind of a menacing way, so killed her uncle in the past. She tries to tell off Fisk about vigilante, saying that shouldn't be her main focus, but then she gets brushed off. Heather Glenn, in the next scene, we see her at a book signing event. She gets a visit from one of Fisk's men at the event with getting her contact information because Fisk wants to get some therapy for him and Vanessa. So then eventually Fisk ventures off to meet the police commissioner at the cop funeral. This commissioner flat out hates Fisk and makes it clear to him that he'll make his mayor tenure very short and calls him Kingpin, which if you've seen Daredevil season, I believe it was in season 1 or season 2, even though his name is Kingpin and we know him as Kingpin in the comics, he hates it when people call him Kingpin to his face. Like, that's his alias, but don't just call him Kingpin. Like, you call him Mr. Fisk. So I think that this guy might end up being on Kingpin's doo-doo list. Like, Kingpin is going after you. Like, this is... So then Kirsten and Sherry decide to go and visit Hector's wife and get clues on Hector. And of course, get his suit for when he goes back to court again and files on his innocence. Sherry snoops around and finds Hector's white tiger costume and amulet and reveals this information to Matt, in which Matt was on his date with Heather but receives this information on a phone call and cuts it short. Then he decides to go and visit Riker's Island. He goes and visits Riker's Island and shows him footage of White Tiger. And Hector confirms that that is him, but he needs to protect the streets since Daredevil hasn't been around. Soon after, Commissioner visits Fisk one more time in his office to resign immediately with the police force, but Fisk played a really good Uno reverse card. He showed that he knows about his wife and his son and got a sandwich from the shop. They went to the lunch, so they went and got lunch at a sandwich shop. The commissioner's wife and son were there and he took pictures of them, which scares the commissioner. So then Fisk denies any pay raises, overtime, and commissioner's resignation, and then says that he's going to continue working for them. And does he accept? And of course the commissioner accepts for now. He's pissed but then leaves. And then when he leaves, Fisk says that that sandwich was disgusting and throws it away. Meanwhile, Matt is trying to get a retrial for Hector, but they aren't going for it at the office. Due to new upcoming evidence about Hector being the White Tiger, and they had video footage of him as the White Tiger from prior months, he will get a retrial. And we get a scene of Matt following and listening for the guy that was in the station the night that Hector's incident happened. Hector gets two new clients, or I'm sorry, not Hector. Heather gets two new clients, which happens to be Mayor Fisk and Vanessa for marriage therapy. During the therapy, Fisk reveals that he couldn't be in touch with Vanessa for a while, and the guy who had left, the guy who had ran off from the crooked cops, is being traced by Matt to be used as a witness in the courtroom, but the cops are on their way to kill him. Matt helps him leave via the fire escape, but Matt stays behind. The whole room gets serious. Matt attempts to blockade the cops, but they get pissed anyway and assault Matt. The both of them. Soon they try to kill Matt, but he kicks both of their asses. One of them has to be dead, and that ends opted. But after Matt does his epic iconic scream. So basically these episodes were a breath of fresh air. They gave us what we really wanted, the serious, gritty crime drama like the good old Netflix days. The tone is captured, the pacing seems to be on par with it. There are some minor issues here and there. It definitely did leave me wanting more. And the last time I was pretty much satisfied with the MCU product was Deadpool and Wolverine, which I'm not even gonna give that credit to Kevin Feige like that, but I'm gonna just give the credit where credit is due. Daredevil is back and born again with a 9 out of 10 rating. Let me know what y'all think.
She don't wanna be saved, don't save her. 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 She don't wanna be saved.